ESPN Speed World. The NHRA, the world's largest motorsport sanctioning body, showcasing speeds in excess of 290 miles an hour and traveling the quarter mile in less than 5 seconds. Championship drag racing from the NHRA. It's hard to believe that over a quarter of this 1990 NHRA Winston Championship drag racing season has already passed. The most recent event in the $18 million 19-race schedule was at Gainesville Raceway, where in pro stock the fans were treated to a new champion as Kenny Delco raced Ricky Smith, neither driver having won a national event. This was a battle between the Northeast and the South as the New York-based Delco took his first championship. Delco's win moved him into third place overall in the Season Points Championship. In Funny Car, veteran pilot Ed McCulloch posted his first 1990 win, defeating Winter Nationals champion Casey Spurlock. That win pushed McCulloch to second in the points chase, with defending Winston champ Bruce Larson still hanging on to a slim lead. Top Fuel Eliminator saw a repeat of 1989 as Darrell Gwynn completely dominated the field and capped his day in front of the Florida fans by beating Eddie Hill for the title. In so doing, Darrell closed to within 300 points of series leader Dick LaHaye. Now we move to outside Commerce, Georgia, just north of Atlanta, for the 10th annual AC Delco Southern Nationals. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and welcome to the new Atlanta Dragway, a site that back in 1987 saw Darrell Gwynn take one of his early Top Fuel victories. As all of you know by now, he won't have that opportunity today, as on April 15th, Darrell was critically injured in a crash at Santa Pod Raceway in Bedfordshire, England. Immediately after the accident, Gwynn was rushed to Stoke Mandeville Hospital in Aylesbury. The impact with the wall left Darrell with severe injuries to his back and left arm. The threat of spreading infection forced doctors to amputate that arm below the elbow. Even though Darrell is not here today, you can be certain he has not been forgotten. Right, Steve Evans?
Dave, as you know, this is the first race since Top Fuel driver Darrell Gwynn was so critically injured in a drag racing incident in England this past April. Now, as crowded as the pits are here at Atlanta Dragway, with over 600 cars, no one wanted this space in honor of Darrell Gwynn. This was his assigned pit spot. Now, earlier today, the fans in the stands opened their hearts and their wallets to the Darrell Gwynn Recovery Fund. Doctors estimate that Darrell's recovery process will be lengthy. A special 900 telephone number has been established by friends of Darrell Gwynn, and by calling 1-900-535-8181, a donation of $5 less operating costs will be made to the Darrell Gwynn Rehabilitation Fund. In addition to helping a worthy cause with your donation, you will also hear periodic updates on Darrell's condition. And Darrell, if you're watching, we're all praying for you, and I know you, like everybody else, would like to get to the action. We've got a great drag race in store for us today.
Steve, we certainly do, and the largest crowd ever to jam into the new Atlanta Dragway is poised to watch the second round of Top Fuel Eliminator. Our first pair of cars, Joe Amato. And take a look, there on the wing strut, you see fluttering in the wind the little strip of yellow. That is a yellow ribbon tied to these Top Fuel dragsters to send a message to Darrell Gwynn. Get well soon, and we definitely miss you here at Atlanta. Amato in the near lane, racing Jim Head in the far side of the racetrack. Amato has already won one event this season out at Phoenix for Jim Head. He has won a victory of sorts. He is beginning to gain some performance out of his new Top Fuel dragster. The Ohio driver qualified number 8 with a 5:06. But how about Joe Amato? The driver of the Valvoline Special notched a 496 in qualifying to put him not only number 1, but in the track record book with the quickest elapsed time ever on the new Atlanta Dragway quarter mile. The burnout's completed. Amato staging in the near lane. In the far lane, Jim Head. A great race, not as close time-wise as it looked on the racetrack, though. For Joe Amato, a 5:14 and 2:73, a 5:21 for Jim Head. As we look again in replay, not only did Amato outperform Head, he also outdrove him. Joe picked up about 0.03 of a second advantage off the starting line. He continued to battle with Head down the racetrack. At the 8th mile point, it looked to be very equal. Then right at the finish line, Amato squirts ahead for the win. The 1990 NHRA AC Delco Southern Nationals is being brought to you by AC Delco. Automotive parts that don't just fit, they match. And by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Busch Beer, the beer with a taste as smooth as its name. In John Force's pit area, a crewman working on the engine, getting that car ready, as he will be facing Al Hoffman in round number 2 of Funny Car, coming up just a bit later. When he comes up in round number 2. Right now, it is Top Fuel Eliminator continuing, and Laurie Johns is in the far lane of the racetrack. On the near side, the 1987 Winston champion, Dick LaHaye. This is a brand new Jolly Rancher special for Laurie Johns. This is not the car that carried her to victory at 4 second elapsed times early in the season. She won the opener in Pomona. This is Kim LaHaye, the crew chief on the Miller Highlight special of Dick LaHaye. That's her dad doing the driving, and he won the race at Houston earlier this season. LaHaye is currently leading the Winston points chase, and he qualified here in the number 3 spot with a 5 flat, beating Kenny Bernstein in round 1. Laurie Johns thundered to a 5:04 with that new car. She beat Michael Smith in her first round confrontation. The crews have made their final checks of these 4,000 horsepower racing machines. Laurie Johns on the far side of the racetrack, Dick LaHaye nearest the camera. We're in round number 2 at the AC Delco Southern Nationals. Both cars set. And LaHaye goes up in smoke. Laurie Johns across the finish line. Her elapsed time of 5:10. She advances into the semifinals at a speed of 267 miles an hour. Laurie Johns gives herself a hand, and Dick LaHaye has got to be concerned. He's now very vulnerable to losing the Winston points lead, with Joe Amato having already won in this round, and now Laurie Johns. Both of them have been very close to LaHaye coming into the Southern Nationals. The next pair of cars, the reigning Winston champ. Here's the Castrol special of Gary Ormsby. While he has not been a winner in the first 4 events this season, Ormsby has finished high enough in each of the shows to put him in the top 5 in the Winston standings this year. He is racing the veteran out of Fort Worth, Texas, Gene Snow. On the far side of the track, Ormsby begins his burnout procedures. Snow now begins to roll forward. He'll go into a puddle of water, get the tires wet, then hammer the throttle and burn those big 17-inch wide slicks. Now let's go down to the far end of the racetrack. Steve Evans is there with Laurie Johns.
If Laurie Johns was nervous at all about debuting a new race car, well, those feelings are gone. 5:10, you're headed for the semis.
Oh, thank goodness, Steve. I was more nervous about that round probably than I could have been racing anybody else. Right now, I think that Dick LaHaye is a man to contend with on the NHRA circuit, and I surely felt that we had our work cut out for us, but I guess we did our job today.
How does this car feel differently than the old car?
Well, at first I didn't like it, but that was just my own shortcomings. It's a fantastic car, and it just drives like a Cadillac. It's so fast and so neat and so smooth that it wasn't rough enough for me, but now I just love it.
Okay, Laurie Johns.
Steve, I think she likes that race car. She's excited headed to the semifinals. Look at Gary Ormsby's race car. See the Gary Ormsby Racing? Look how high those side panels are. Totally blocks Ormsby's vision out of the side of the car. He qualified in the number 7 spot with a 5:05, beat Eddie Hill in round 1, while Snow was the first man in the 4-second range here at the new Atlanta Dragway. He qualified second with a 4:99 and beat Jack Ostrander in his first round race. Snow in the near side of the track. Ormsby on the far side. They're approaching the starting line area, getting themselves set in the staging beam. The lights on the top of the tree indicate when the car is ready. When that second light on the tree is lit, Buster Couch, the official starter, can throw the switch at any point, send them on their way. Ormsby with a carling victory wins the race over Gene Snow, a 5:13 to a 5:14, but a huge starting line advantage for Ormsby. Take a close look at the far side of the racetrack. As we look in replay, right there, you can see nearly 7/100ths of a second advantage going to Gary Ormsby. Almost impossible to make up. Gene Snow tried. He came within a car length. The time's very close, a 5:13 to a 5:14, but Ormsby was the winner. Steve?
That had to have been a squeaker, Gary. A 13 for you, a 14 for Gene Snow.
Oh, I didn't even see him. I don't know how close it was, but I actually never saw him.
That has something to do, I think, with the high panels on these new cars.
The thing is, Steve, they're not out in front of me. I can't see them. Maybe that's a good sign. When I see them, I'm in trouble.
Tell me about the racetrack.
It's off a little bit because we pepped her up a little bit for that run, you know, figuring that the track would go away a little bit, and our time went away a little bit.
Yeah, you will not have lane choice.
Who are we running?
Lori.
Lori? Well, I don't know if that's that big a factor. I don't think either lane's that good.
Stevie may not think it's that big a factor, but let me point out, every low qualified and every quicker car has selected the far lane of the racetrack, as Frank Bradley has in this race against Don Prudhomme. Bradley in the Joker Special has not been a winner on the NHRA Winston Trail since the California Nationals out at Sears Point Raceway in July a year ago. Don Prudhomme made the switch back to Top Fuel this season after a spectacular career in funny car. And Prudhomme would be the first to tell you it's not been easy. He qualified here with a 5:13, beat Mike Brotherton in the first round. Frank Bradley had a great 5:02 in qualifying. Good for the number 4 spot. He put away Shirley Muldowney in his first round race. Now Bradley selecting the lane furthest from the camera by virtue of his lower ET in the previous round of elimination. Prudhomme, in fact, had smoked the tires in round 1, and the Skull Bandit does it again. And Bradley across the finish line with the victory, 5:46, 256 miles an hour. Bradley's car falling off drastically from both his qualifying time and the 5:09 that he had in the first round of eliminations. That sets up the semi-final pairings of Joe Amato against Frank Bradley, with Amato getting to choose his lane. The other side of the ladder, Gary Ormsby, the reigning Winston champ, against Lori Johns. Lori choosing her lane. Out of the pit area, Ed McCulloch's crew hard at work on his engine, getting his car ready for the second round race against Richard Hartman. That'll be coming up later at Atlanta. In the AC Delco Southern Nationals, and we're getting ready for some of the most popular cars on this racetrack. We're talking about the Factory Hot Rods Pro Stock Eliminator. Here's the Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson. This is the semi-final round of competition. The final 4 of the Pro Stocks. Against Johnson, we find the Pontiac of Jerry Ekman. Before the race gets underway between Johnson and Ekman, let's take a look back to the previous round, where Ekman, from his number 2 qualifying position, was racing Bob Glidden, the driver of the Motorcraft Ford Probe, who was only able to qualify 10th and beat Frank Iaconio in the first round. Ekman had defeated Gary Herman to earn the right to race Glidden in round number 2. In that race, Glidden had a slight advantage off the starting line, but the power was under the hood of the Pontiac, and Ekman defeated Glidden with an elapsed time of 7.36 seconds. That advanced him into the semifinals, where he will meet WJ Warren Johnson, the number 3 qualifier, with a 7.26. In his second round race, WJ was challenged by Kenny Delco, the number 6 qualifier, at a 7.28, and the most recent winner on the NHRA trail. He picked up the title down at Gainesville, Florida. In that second round race, Johnson had the lane choice. He selected the far lane and made it pay off. He had a much quicker elapsed time, a 7.33 to a losing 7.43. His speed over 188 miles an hour, advancing him into the final 4, where it is now the AC Delco Oldsmobile of WJ Warren Johnson against Jerry Ekman at the wheel of the Pennzoil Pontiac. Look at this huge crowd. They're on their feet. They love these full-bodied race cars with their 500 cubic inch engines, gasoline-burning power plants that make about 1,200, 1,250 horsepower. The cars weigh 2,350 pounds minimum with the driver on board. And Jerry Ekman out in front of the starting line. But also close in the finish, and WJ moves to the finals. 7:32 at 188 miles an hour. Ekman with the big hole shot or starting line advantage almost pulled off the upset of the race. As we look again in replay, you can see Johnson in the far lane was put into a catch-up roll at the start, but it did not take him very long to get his Oldsmobile out in front, and then he was able to maintain that lead until they crossed the finish line. WJ, the winner, into the finals.
The Georgia fans have something to cheer for today. 7:32. You look beat up.
Oh, this is getting tough on old folks.
You happy with the 32?
Only if it's got lane choice. 32 is a good run out here. It's getting a little bit greasy out there, but at least we won.
Any home track advantage? You can test here. Your shop is 30 minutes away.
Yeah, but it's not the same as racing on a national event track. We need the fuel cars out there to give that rubber coat there, so when they're running the bracket cars out there, it's not the same racetrack.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Steve.
That sets up one half of our final round. It'll be Warren Johnson trying for his second victory this season against the winner of this race. In the near lane is Mark Powick. The far lane, the Castrol Olds of Larry Morgan. Powick, the national record holder at Houston earlier this season. He ran a 7.22 second elapsed time, the all-time quickest run ever by a pro stocker. But here at the AC Delco Southern Nationals, things not faring quite so well for Powick, even though he's right here against Morgan in the semifinals. He only was able to run 7:27. That qualified him number 5. In the second round of competition today, he raced Joe Lapone Jr., the number 4 qualifier, with a 7:26. It was the Summit Racing Beretta in the near lane, while Powick, who had the lane choice after beating Steve Schmidt in the first round, was in the far lane. His 200th of a second advantage off the starting line paid off for Powick at the finish. He squeezed out a victory with a 7:37 elapsed time, 186 miles an hour. Mark's semifinal round opponent, Larry Morgan, qualified number 8 with a 7:30 and beat Ricky Smith in his first round race. He was challenged in round number 2 by Bruce Allen, the number 1 qualifier at a 7:26 in the Super Shops Beretta. Allen, the current Winston points leader, beat Frank Sanchez in his first round race. Both drivers took their times here in round number 2, getting into the staging beams. But once they did, the green light came on, and Allen had the advantage off the starting line. It was not enough, though, to hold off the power of Morgan's Olds. 7.33 seconds. His speed 187 miles an hour, and that brings us to this semifinal round of racing. Powick screen right, Morgan screen left. They're both set. The advantage off the line to Powick. But look at Larry Morgan. His elapsed time, 7.31 seconds, the quickest of eliminations thus far, a speed of 188 miles an hour. In replay, we'll be able to see a very slight advantage, about 0.03 of a second, going to the car in the near lane. That's Mark Powick. But look at the power that the Bob Pinella-owned Oldsmobile, driven by Larry Morgan, is able to put together. As they came to the finish line, Morgan was out in front and stayed there. The final round of Pro Stock Eliminator at the AC Delco Southern Nationals will find Warren Johnson against Larry Morgan. And with a quick ET of eliminations, Morgan's got the lane choice. Steve?
Well, Warren Johnson said he'd only be happy with his 7:32 if it gave him lane choice. It won't. Larry Morgan 7:31.
Thank God. I'll tell you, we were hoping we'd get a lane choice, because I'll tell you what, it's pretty critical here. But I think Warren, you know, he lives down here and he tests here a lot. I believe he can get down either lane, but I'll tell you what, he's gonna have to work for it.
He said that was no advantage.
Oh, I think he's right, because he can get down both lanes, but I don't think I can. Thank God I get that lane.
All right, Larry Morgan may have all the cards for the final round in Pro Stock.
Steve, we'll find out the answer to that question a little bit later on, as back in the pit area, Lori Johns is hard at work signing some autographs while her crew is preparing the race car for its match with Jerry Ormsby. That's later here at the AC Delco Southern Nationals at the new Atlanta Dragway. Pit area of Lori Johns, his semi-final round opponent here at the AC Delco Southern Nationals. They take these engines completely apart. Here's a crewman working with a piston and rod as crew chief Lee Beard goes over the selection of spark plug. That top fuel round coming up just a little bit later. Right now, it's Funny Car Eliminator. Here is the reigning Winston champion. That is Bruce Larson. His competition, a fellow East Coaster, the Blue Thunder car out of Brooklyn, New York, Jerry Caminito. Larson now has got a brand new engine sitting inside that Oldsmobile body. After the damage suffered in round number 1, his crew chief Maynard Yangst and all the gang went to work, pulled it out, put the new one in. There's always a question, will it run as good as the previous motor did? For Larson, he hopes so. He qualified number 2 at a 5:24. Jerry Caminito qualified 7th. His elapsed time 5:40. He beat Frank Hamburger in round number 1. The chalk mark on the asphalt indicating the spot a crewman wants Jerry Caminito to end up in as far as placing that left rear tire. Looks like he might have missed the mark just a little bit. Both drivers now beginning to get themselves ready for the run and concentrate on the Christmas tree. We've already seen the advantage that can be gained by just a slight hole shot or getting off the starting line quicker than your competitor. Sometimes that is the margin of victory at the finish line. This time it is Larson out first. And there at the finish line first with another 5:20. A 5:28, 2:69. The engine change apparently making little difference to the performance of the Century Tack and Gauges Oldsmobile. Back at the starting line, the engine's coming to life in our next pair of round number 2 of Funny Car Eliminator here in Atlanta. This is Jim White, one of the quickest cars in the world. It is the Hawaiian Punch Dodge, owned and tuned by Roland Leon. His competition is Paul Smith. He drives the Future Force car that is owned by Chuck Etchell. While Smith and Jim White go through the burnout procedure to get those tires up to racing temperature, let's go down to the far end of the track where Steve is with Bruce Larson.
The confidence that winning a championship brings a race team. Your crew had to change engines. They were actually whistling while they were doing it, confident that it would run 5:28.
Yeah, they did good. It was their smoothest engine change ever. We didn't start the car. We didn't warm it up. Just fired it up there and ran real good.
And the racetrack is working for this car anyway.
Oh yeah, the track is real good. They did a lot over the winter to this track. It's great.
Top fuel guys don't like it as much as the funny car drivers.
We don't care about them.
Never have.
Steve, I guess it's all a matter of perspective. For every driver here in Atlanta, we've got a different opinion about this racetrack. The crew making the final check on Paul Smith's Chevy, while in the far lane, same thing going on for the Dodge of Jim White. This is the number 1 qualified car. White ran a 5:22 in qualifying, then beat Freddie Neely in the first round. Paul Smith, meantime, had a 5:40 to qualify in the 8th spot, and his first round race was against Tom Hoover, where the Beretta in the near lane ran its quickest elapsed time ever, the same for Paul, at a 5:29. White is facing a serious challenge here in round number 2. White smoking the tires, and Paul Smith across the finish line into the semifinals. His elapsed time falling off just a bit to a 5:52, 257 miles an hour. But he is the victor, and that puts him into the semifinals. Himself checking over the computer on his top fuel dragster, getting ready for the semifinals. I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and we're here at the new Atlanta Dragway for the 10th annual AC Delco Southern Nationals. As Joe works on his race car, let's go to Steve, who's with one of our funny cars semifinalists.
Paul Smith has not heard these words in a long time. You're going to the semifinal round with a 5:52.
Oh, really? It was moving around pretty bad down there.
Saw that.
And the lane was weak, so we backed it off, and we thought he might smoke the tires. I don't know what happened, did he?
Yes, he did. You know, this beautiful body disguises, well, some antique motor parts in some ways.
Well, it's got some good motor parts, but it's got some old Paul Smith in it. In other words, the valves are a little smaller. I try to, keep, the overhead down. And me and Chuck, we try to do this without a sponsor, but we're getting close to get one, and if we get one, we're going to be some winners.
This could go a long ways to making that happen.
Steve, the 20 years of experience that Paul Smith has got certainly paying off here at Atlanta. As our next two cars do their burnout, I want to remind you, at the end of this race, we're going to be announcing the winner of the Goodyear Eagle Driver of the Race Award. Goodyear will be giving $1,000 to SEMA and the scholarship fund to the Specialty Equipment Market Association in that driver's name. You're on board with John Force. At the wheel of his Castrol Oldsmobile, he is racing the blower drive service special of Al Hoffman. In his first round race, Al got a red light. At that point, his competition, the winner of the Winter Nationals, Casey Spurlock, had the race won. But in his quest for a low elapsed time, a quick ET to get the lane choice in round number 2, Spurlock in the far lane let his car drift just a little bit. It came in contact with the timing devices, a violation of the rule that reinstated Al Hoffman to race John Force here in round number 2. Force qualified with an elapsed time of a 5:29. Good for the number 4 spot. The body being lowered over the engine and chassis of the funny car of John Force as the crew checks the oil pressure gauge, a quick check of the parachute, and Force begins to roll forward into the staging beams. His crew chief is Austin Coyle. That's the man out directing traffic. For Al Hoffman, his crew chief is his wife, Helen Hoffman. Here we are riding on board with John Force against Al Hoffman at the Southern Nationals. Force the last to stage. Something going wrong with Hoffman's car. And you just took a ride at 264 miles an hour as John Force had an elapsed time of 5:38. Hoffman idling through. Something going wrong with his car right at the starting line. It was unable to leave the line with any authority, and Force advances to the semifinals. The engine coming to life for Ed McCulloch, the most recent winner. In NHRA Winston competition, he took home the title at the Gator Nationals. His competition, the new driver for the Ray Festus Special. This is Richard Hartman. What a moment for the 22-year-old Hartman. He is racing the quickest funny car in the world. Steve?
That 5:38 elapsed time indicates that John Force and crew are playing it conservatively, unlike Jim White, who smoked the tires in that lane. Great job. You gauged it just right.
Well, we saw that happen, Steve, and I know Coyle when he gets nervous, and there's a lot of points going down here, and Spurlock falling out gave us a chance to go around him, and we just didn't want a mistake. It's going to hurt us on lane choice probably, but the car's not running the way it should, so we're going to just take another approach at getting these guys.
That's 2 down and 2 to go.
Steve, remarkable. Here we are 5 races into the year, and they're already intensely concerned about the point standings. This is Richard Hartman. He ran 5:37 in qualifying, the quickest ever by that car. Beat Scott Coletta in his first round race. Ed McCulloch qualified 3rd at a 5:26. He defeated Mark Oswald in round number 1. Late last year, McCulloch ran a 5:13 at Dallas. That's the quickest ever by a funny car. Neither driver wanting to stage first. They're taking their time. The engine's sitting and idling, building heat in the motor. They make more power the hotter they get. Could be a factor in keeping traction. Both cars stuck to the pavement. McCulloch in the near lane across the finish line. First, one of the few winners that we have found here in the near lane. 5:44. His speed only 258 miles an hour. As we look again, it was almost identical reaction times at the start. But in this case, both cars were able to put the power to the ground. For Hartman, his elapsed time was a 5:56. He gave a strong challenge to McCulloch, but the ace just a bit too much power at the finish line, and the victory by more than a car length. That sets up the semifinals in Funny Car Eliminator, where McCulloch will be racing the Winston champ Bruce Larson, and Larson's great 528 has the lane choice. John Force gets to pick his lane over Paul Smith in the other side of the bracket. We'll be coming right back to Atlanta. Getting Warren Johnson's Oldsmobile ready for its final round appearance against Larry Morgan. While this crew performs the necessary maintenance, let's go down to the far end of the racetrack and join Steve.
All of us who read NHRA's weekly magazine, National Drag Story, just blown away by the photography. Here's a neat trick they use for great finish line photos. Now, for a human being to get this, it'd have to be Dr. J and have 4 arms. Let me show you how it works. On my left, this is a Hasselblad 500mm lens grafted to a Nikon F camera. On the right is a 300mm lens on a Nikon F3 camera. Both are loaded with Tri-X black and white film. Both have motor drives at about 6 frames per second. Now, one is pointed right directly at the finish line, the other a little bit past the finish line, and the shots overlap. Don Frizzell, by the way, designed all of this. Now, they are wired remotely down through what he calls the chicken box, because sometimes he wants to be a long ways away from this thing, but not today. Now, Don has a third handheld camera to get action further down the shutdown area, and the activator switches for all 3 cameras are on this one. So anytime those cars get near the finish line, he is blazing away with all 3 weapons. And that's what keeps 70,000 members happy with what they see and read in National Dragster. And you could be one of those members. Just call this number and join NHRA. You'll get Dragster 48 weeks a year and a rule book and a pen and all the other benefits. And if you call right now, you'll get free Diamond P's home video, Drag Racing 89. Do it.
Steve, it's time for the final 4 in Top Fuel Eliminator. Joe Amato in the far lane of the racetrack. Frank Bradley here on the near side. The question mark is, can this near side of the racetrack hold the power of a car like Frank Bradley's? Amato certainly hopes not. He has dialed his car in for what he considers to be the better lane. Both cars roll forward at the same time. They're set. And Bradley fries the tires, and Amato across the finish line and into the finals. His wife, Jerry, very enthused about that victory because Joe Amato just ran low ET of eliminations at 5 seconds flat. His speed, 287 miles an hour. That's got to be a happy race car driver and crew chief. That's Larry Meyer, the crew chief for Laurie Johns, because they're going to follow right in the tracks of Joe Amato, who just had that brilliant 5-second flat elapsed time. Her competition is the reigning Winston champ, Gary Ormsby, who, if you will remember, after his second round victory, said he didn't think the lane choice made any difference. Let's go to Steve.
Well, Joe Amato continues to harvest those Winston points with dazzling performance. 5 flat, 287.
Well, I guess Tim Richards and the guys did a good job. We've been struggling a little bit today, but you know the clouds are covering the sun, and put the horsepower in it and stepped right up.
That is one of the biggest speeds we have seen this year with the new low gear ratio mandatory.
Yeah, we ran 287, 288 about 3 years ago with that combination, but you know that was then. This is now, and it's a different world out there.
David?
Steve, the new rules have certainly changed the face of Top Fuel racing, brought some parity to it, and that is one of the reasons why we have had a different winner at each of the 4 previous events thus far this season. Ormsby has yet to win a race. A year ago at this time, he was a dominant force. Laurie Johns won the season opener at Pomona in the Winter Nationals. A good start for both drivers. And Laurie Johns powers past Gary Ormsby. Ormsby had the whole shot advantage, but the 5:07 for Laurie at 271 was enough to put her into the finals. The time for Ormsby of 5:14. Laurie will race yet another Winston champion, Joe Amato, in the final. He won it in '88. Joe has the lane choice. 10th annual AC Delco Southern Nationals. We're ready for the last 4 cars in funny car racing. The semifinal round finds Bruce Larson picking the lane furthest from the camera. His competition, Ed McCulloch in the near lane. All day long, we have heard drivers talk about this race course. Lane choice could be the critical factor here. And Bruce Larson smokes the tires. Ed McCulloch into the finals for the third time this season. His elapsed time, look at that, 5:34 in the lane that's supposedly the bad lane here at Atlanta. 263 miles an hour, and what a disappointment it's got to be for Bruce Larson. The last two cars of this round already running and doing the burnouts. This is Paul Smith. We're riding with John Force as he smokes in the cockpit of that Oldsmobile. Steve Evans.
Ed McCullough, you've got the balance of power on this racetrack, staying right in the low 530s and not losing traction.
Well, you know, it's a tricky track. I mean, the cloud cover, we've been praying for it. We were over in the left lane, which is not the best lane. I don't know what happened to Bruce, but, you know, we got here first, and that's what we need.
The cloud cover looks like it's going to stay.
It's going to get better. I think by final round, it doesn't matter what lane you got, so we're okay.
That's the way drag racing ought to be.
Steve, in most cases, it's always an advantage to have lane choice. You never really know what's going to happen between right now and that final round race. Whether McCullough keeps or loses the lane choice is totally dependent on the outcome of this race between Paul Smith in the near lane and John Force, where our onboard camera has a look right out the front window of the Oldsmobile. And Paul Smith upset John Force. The biggest victory, I am sure, of Paul Smith's career. A 5.35 second elapsed time at 263. The losing time of 5:37. Let's look again in replay. Both drivers had almost identical reaction times. This is one of the closest races you will ever watch. As they neared the halfway point, Paul Smith had pulled ever so slightly ahead of John Force, and at the finish line, he held on to that lead for the victory. That moves Paul Smith into his first final round appearance since 1980. This is the third of the 1990 season for Ed McCullough.
The old-time drag racing fans have gone crazy at Atlanta Dragway. You're going to the finals, Paul.
I need it bad. Me and Chuck Etchell have been trying this our 4th year. I wished he was here driving it, but he couldn't make it. We're gonna try to win for you, Chuck. Hope we can.
How long you been doing this?
20 years.
And have never won an NHRA national event?
Nope, into the semis. They did a final once. Here we go. Hope we can do it, guys.
All right, here's a crew that feels like they've already done it.
Steve, what a day for Paul Smith and the Chuck Etchell's crew, and what an upset over John Force. We'll be right back to Atlanta and the 10th annual AC Delco Southern Nationals. The finals of the Southern Nationals in Pro Stock Eliminator. It is Warren Johnson in the near lane of the track. He was placed there by his competition, Larry Morgan. Johnson, with his home and race shop just about 30 minutes south of this racetrack, certainly has the support of this huge Georgia crowd. He lives in the Atlanta suburb of Duluth. For Morgan out of Ohio, he's won only one NHRA national event title. That came last year at the U.S. Nationals at Indy, when he had a doubleheader weekend, picking up the Pro Stock Challenge title and the Nationals. Both drivers taking their time. Who's going to break first? It is Johnson staging first. And Warren Johnson red lights. Larry Morgan, the automatic winner. His elapsed time, 7.31 seconds. The celebration begins on the starting line. And what a day it is for car owner Bob Pinella. In addition to celebrating his birthday today, his driver Larry Morgan has won his second national event title. In replay, we see exactly how it happened. Warren Johnson just got too anxious, left the starting line too soon. You see the red light glowing on the Christmas tree. That handed the win at that point to Larry Morgan, the champion of the AC Delco Southern Nationals. Steve is with him at the far end of the track.
Instead of letting Larry Morgan say, boy, am I happy, like he always does, we know you're happy. Tell us how you felt when you went to the starting line.
I really felt like I'd win. I really did. I'm really pretty up, and I just can't believe it.
Your 7:31 was quicker than his elapsed time. He wasted it on a red light anyway.
Yeah, I saw a red light. I kind of figured he would, and
You got it all figured out.
Well, I was hoping that he would red light, you know. But I'll tell you what, the Castrol GTX, Bob Pinella Oldsmobile, what can I say? I can't say enough. You know, one of my crewmen had to go home because his mother had a heart attack, and I guess this one's for him. Absolutely. My wife, my son Nick, Pinellas, all the guys at the shop, Jimmy Oliver. You know, there's a lot of guys at the shop that never get credit. My engine builder, my head porter, I just love them. Without them, I wouldn't be here.
You're the champ.
Thank you.
Steve, this victory for Larry certainly helped him in the Winston point standings. It moved him up to 6th, but the interesting thing to note is the 10-time and reigning champion Bob Glidden struggling a bit in 4th spot, while Bruce Allen continues to hold on to the lead. Meanwhile, back on the starting line, one of the true surprises of this Southern Nationals, Paul Smith, is getting himself ready for the final round race against Ed McCulloch. That'll be coming up in just a moment at the new Atlanta Dragway. At the AC Delco Southern Nationals, this is the finals of Funny Car Eliminator, and for the first time in 10 years, we find Paul Smith, one of the finalists. Paul told us earlier he's been trying for 20 years to win one of these national events. And just before this round, Steve took a look at the Smith-Etchells operation.
Paul Smith and car owner Chuck Etchells, well, they're budget racers, and to stay on the tour as much as they can, they just can't spend a lot of money. They've got to make do with what they have and run a very conservative combination. But you can bet any new part that was in this trailer a few minutes ago is headed for that race car, because they do not want to give this away. It's their first chance at winning an NHRA national event final round. Now, they've taken a new rear end out and installed that because the old one was making some noise. What they don't have are contemporary cylinder heads, and it's costing them probably several hundred horsepower. The intake valve here, that is the smallest you'd find anywhere in this pit area. That's probably 5 or 6 years old, the technology there. If they win, you can bet some of that prize money will be invested in some new cylinder heads. But I think that picture right there says it all. Paul Smith, volunteer crew, friends from over the years, all pitching in to try to put their man in the winner's circle for the first time in 20-some-odd years.
Steve, he has got quite a hill to climb, challenging Ed McCulloch. The lane choice here going to McCulloch. He has been consistent in the 530s. Etchells, of course, with that 529 in round number 1. Serves notice that he's got the power if he can put it together. He rolls in and deep stages. In other words, goes deeper into the staging procedure. And Smith goes up in smoke. And McCulloch back-to-back for the first time this season, a repeat winner in Funny Car Eliminator. He won the Gator Nationals and now the Southern Nationals. McCulloch's time, 5.31 seconds. His speed, 258 miles an hour. What a disappointment this had to be for Paul Smith to come this far, then fall victim to the loss of traction. Your champion in Funny Car, Ed McCulloch. Now we're set for the finals in Top Fuel Eliminator. Lori Johns against Joe Amato, and Lori has certainly earned her right to race in the finals. In the second round, she defeated the 1987 Winston champ, Dick LaHaye. In the semifinals, it was the reigning champ, Gary Ormsby, that fell to Lori Johns. Now let's go to the far end of the track, Steve Evans.
When the helmet comes off, you'll be looking at the first repeat pro winner this season, amazingly as it may sound, and the Winston points leader. Ace, great job.
Steve, this one was for Daryl Gwynn. We won together in Gainesville. Daryl, Jerry, I wish you guys were here. Maybe we could have done it again. But for Oldsmobile, Miller, Goodyear, Larry Minor, I'm tickled to death.
We're tickled for you.
Thank you.
McCulloch certainly enjoying one of his best seasons ever. He is one of the original Funny Car racers, and now here in 1990 has just picked up his second event win of the season. This victory moves him into the lead of the Winston point standings. It's kind of reshuffled things a little bit. Bruce Larson is second, John Forrest third, Casey Spurlock in fourth, and Mark Oswald in the number 5 spot with 14 races left in the NHRA Winston season. Now, Lori Johns is challenging the number 1 qualifier, the quickest car on the racetrack. That is Joe Amato, the 1988 Winston champ. In the previous rounds, Lori has been deep staging, trying to gain an advantage at the starting line. A few inches here could mean a difference of a couple of feet at the finish. She does it again. Just a couple of inches. What a tremendous race second race this season. And what a celebration amongst the Johns family and crew. Lori's mother reflecting definitely the enthusiasm of this victory, and it was close. The elapsed times identical between the two cars. 5:02 for Lori Johns, 5:02 for Joe Amato. Her advantage at the starting line, about 2/100ths of a second. And look how close it was at the finish. Lori wins it by just a couple of feet. Steve?
6/1000ths of a second difference between your elapsed times and Joe's, but you got there first. It doesn't matter. You are the champion at Top Fuel. 5:02.
5:02, that's fantastic. We were very, very confident going into the final round. I guess we shouldn't have been, but we just had a good feeling about it. And we said, we're going to win this race. And Larry Meyer, my crew chief, is probably the most brilliant man out here tuning one of these race cars today. And Ronnie Wood and Ted Fasting, my father, Terry Johns, and here they come. I can hear them honking on their way down here now.
What a way to christen a brand new race car.
Yeah, this brand new Jolly Rancher Top Fuel dragster is just absolutely incredible. And we wouldn't be here without the folks at Jolly Rancher, so it's nice to win at the Southern Nationals. There is something that I really have to say, though. There hasn't been a moment since Monday morning at 9 o'clock that there's a certain person that has been on my mind every single minute of every single day, and that's Daryl Gwynn.
We've all felt that way, don't we?
And he should have won this race this weekend, and he should have won every race this year. And my thoughts and my prayers have been with him every moment of the day. And we love you, Daryl, and we can't wait till you come back.
And he wants you to go celebrate.
We will.
Steve, Lori certainly reflecting the sentiments of everyone in the motorsports community. And look at this. Lori moves into the lead in the Winston standings, followed by LaHaye, Amato, Ormsby, and Gene Snow. In our opinion, the Goodyear Eagle driver of the race is Paul Smith. So Goodyear will be sending a check for $1,000 in his name to the scholarship fund of the Specialty Equipment Market Association. It will be from a very good driver for a very good cause. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Atlanta. The 1990 NHRA AC Delco Southern Nationals has been brought to you by Busch Beer, the beer with the taste as smooth as its name. And by Goodyear Radials, the best-selling performance radials in the world. And by Quaker State, the Big Q is one tough motor oil. Coverage of the NHRA Southern Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports in association with ESPN.